Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, based on which part of the world you belong to. On behalf of Top Solutions, I'm extremely delighted in welcoming you to this webinar on what you need to know about service automation framework. Before we get started, I have few housekeeping items that I would like to go through over. First of all, today's event is recorded. So if you miss any or all of this session, don't worry. We'll be sharing this recording to you in 24 to 48 hours. So I'll be sharing the link across. And we'll be taking questions during the session. So use your chat room to post your questions, and we'll be spending last 15-20 minutes to go through the questions. Great so far. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah. Just quickly about Top Solutions. Top stands for Taking You Beyond. Our vision is to take our customers and partners from their current state of maturity to the envisioned state with our gamification training and consulting services. So we have been placed in Bangalore and Singapore, and we spend most of our engagements mostly in APAC region. Yeah, the next slide. So coming back to the topic, the way when you see the perception about a service has completely changed in the last decade due to the use of smart and mobile technology. We no more go to banks, right? Banks are now at our service in our smartphones. This smart technology has transformed the expectation and perceptions about the quality of service. So we now expect every service at the swipe of a finger. In this webinar, we would like to provide a brief overview of service automation, business drivers for it, and interesting case studies from high-performing organizations across the world, which has adapted service automation. I'm Hari. I'm your host and the moderator for today. I'm CIO of Top Solutions and practice head for Agile DevOps and Automation. So I would like to introduce our speaker today, Jan William Milberg. He's our regional director and Pink Elephant, who is joining us from Kuala Lumpur. So he's responsible for Pink Elephant's regional strategy and operations in Asia. Prior to this, he was working from Netherlands in restarting the whole Pink Elephant initiative. In 2017, Jan Williams published the Service Automation Framework for the design and delivery of automated services, which is internationally considered the first leading publication on service automation. As the author of the book, he is frequent note speaker and moderator at universities and technologies conferences around the world. Jan William holds a bachelor degree in industrial engineering and master's in supply chain management from Rotterdam School of Management. Welcome, Jan.
Hi, Hari. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thanks a lot. I'm turning back this to you now.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be able to present to you today about service automation and the service automation framework. Thanks for the kind introduction. As you know, this is a topic that I'm very passionate about, and I can talk about service automation for hours. But today we're gonna keep it very brief, just half an hour, 40 minutes, in which we're gonna present the audience with the highlights of what service automation is, why it's so interesting, and why so many organizations today are making steps with service automation and are moving forward with that. So I've put together a very small agenda so that the audience know what they can expect from today. What I will do first is that I will give a very high-level overview to the concept of service automation. You read about automation and service automation in the news quite frequently, but not a lot of people truly understand what it's all about. So we'll start with explaining some fundamental background and some key concepts behind service automation before we dive into the theory itself. And that brings us to the second topic of today. After I've explained the basic ideas behind service automation, I will dive into the service automation framework. And that is based on the book that we published last year, I will highlight some key models and systems out of that methodology, and then we'll jump into some of the framework techniques. And there's one of those techniques that I'm going to discuss a little bit more in depth, and that is the technique of service automation blueprinting. And that's an approach that's being used by lots of organizations to really visualize their automated services, and which many organizations find a very useful tool. At the end, I will hand back to you, and then we'll discuss if people who are interested in this topic, how they can proceed further by upgrading their knowledge about service automation. So I hope this is a agenda. I will hopefully I'm going to be able to cover this within the next 30 minutes. If there's any questions from the audience in between, there's a button on your Zoom system that says raise hand, and there you can ask questions, and there you can ask questions which we will discuss towards the end of the webinar. So without further ado, let's start discussing some service automation concepts. On the slide in front of you, you see a number of very well-known companies throughout the world. We have Booking.com, where people can book hotel nights. We have Uber for arranging transportation. Services like Spotify, Netflix, and Geico have all grown very, very rapidly in recent years and are considered the pioneers in the tech world today. So one question that I always like to ask people who have never heard of service automation before is, what is it that these companies exactly have in common? They provide completely different things, but yet they have a very common denominator. And that common denominator is that they are all based upon the concept of service automation. Each of these companies provides services on a day-to-day basis, but does so in a completely automated fashion. Ask yourself the following question. If you are using any of these services, have you ever spoken to someone who actually works there? The answer to that is probably no. If you're booking hotel nights through Booking, you don't speak to an operator. If you're watching a series on Netflix, you don't talk to somebody who works at that company. If you're taking a ride with Uber or Grab, you don't actually talk to somebody who works at Grab. Of course, you talk to the driver, but not the person that is actually organizing the service itself. So because of this reason, all these companies are able to scale their service delivery very, very rapidly. And I think that's one of the key benefits why so many companies are nowadays interested in service automation. Let's look a little bit at the definition of what service automation exactly is. Obviously, service automation is the automated delivery of services. So what we're taking into scope here is only service providers. Obviously, and I think most of us have an IT services background, that includes IT service providers. So companies who provide IT services within their own organization or to others. But service automation is much broader than that. It also includes other types of services, as we've just seen in the example below, on the previous slide. The second key characteristic is that service automation is focused from a user perspective. It means that a user is autonomous to start using that services at any moment that he or she likes to use that service. Think about Grab or Uber, for example. You only use that taxi service at the moment you request a taxi. You only book a hotel night the moment that you want to use it, etc., etc. So one of the big differentiators within service automation is that services are always initiated from the user's point of view. The third key characteristic is that service automation always makes use of something which we call a self-service technology platform. And what we mean with that is, because you deliver services in an automated fashion, you will always need to have some kind of interface, some kind of app or platform or technology portal or browser that will allow you to trigger service requests. So service automation always makes use of these types of self-service technologies. All of the examples that we discussed in the previous slide all provide you with some kind of interface through which it is possible to request your services. And that's very key to the definition of service automation, because without that portal, it's not possible to deliver those services automatically. And then last but not least, and this is one of the key important elements to the whole definition, is that service automation designs services from the user perspective in order to make sure that that user experience is the best possible in the world. The reason for that is that with automated services, it is very difficult to retain your customers. If people don't like your service, they are going to go somewhere else very, very quickly and very, very easily. So you need to find a way in order to make sure that people keep using your services by providing them with an optimal user experience. So before we dive into any of the technologies behind it or any of the methodologies or frameworks, let's have a look at an example. In the screen in front of you, you see a self-service portal. And this one is of an IT service provider company at Netflix, which is a video streaming organization. On the screen here, you see how they have designed their self-service portal. On this page, you can see how they file tickets or request help or order stuff for their IT service department. All of those requests are triggered through this self-service platform. And that is what is so strong about service automation. You provide a single interface through which people can order their services, keep track of their services, and through which the whole back-end system processes and flows are completely automated. Another example is for insurance. This is an insurance provider from the US, which is called Geico. They also have a self-service interface through which you, as a consumer, you can arrange everything. You can submit your claims. You can see the status of your claims. You can pay your bills. You can change or adjust your insurance policies. You can even terminate your policy online. Everything happens in this system automatically. Every click a consumer makes is translated into an automated workflow in the backend. Much more productive, much more fault-free, and much more efficient in the long run, because they channel all their service requests, incidents, and tickets through one single self-service interface. And that's what makes service automation so incredibly strong. So let's have a look at what the key objective of service automation is. On the slide in front of you, you see what I would like to call a traditional service provider. And a traditional service provider, which are most of the companies in the world, provides services to customers on a step-by-step basis. Each of those steps we like to call a user action, which you see at the bottom of the slide. Every service can be broken down into a number of user actions. And I'm just going to illustrate this with a very short example. And let's take the example of riding a cab, for instance, so using the service of Uber. In this specific example, the moment that you want to get a ride, you push a button to request a cab. The cab gets a notification to come to your location. The driver picks you up. He drives you from A to B. Then at the end, you will the ride will be terminated, you will receive an automated payment request, and you can, at the end, rate the driver, and the driver rates you as well. If you think about it, the way that they deliver that service, it is the same. It's the same for one ride or a million rides. So it's a process, it's a flow that consists of a number of steps. So every service provider in the world delivers services into a number of steps, into a number of user actions. So that's what you see. You have people who are working at the service provider side, which are depicted in red on this slide. And you have the end customer or the consumer, which are the people in gray depicted on this slide. And a service is nothing else than just a lot of interactions between a service provider and a consumer. And what is happening is that most service providers today, they keep doing this at a manual basis, either by phone or in meetings or in advisements or consultations. What service automation tries to do is to keep that workflow exactly the same, but put a layer in between. And that layer is called the self-service portal or the automation layer. What we're trying to do with the automation of a service is to make sure that we figure out what those steps are that people take to consume a service, and then we automate every step of the way. So in this slide, you see a number of which is exactly the same as the previous slide, you see a number of user actions. And most of those actions, when you truly look at them, they can be automated. So on the slide, you see things like a request for information, or sending out a proposal, or seeing a quotation, or accepting a quotation. All these are processes that are happening in every organization on a day-to-day basis, but they can be automated very, very easily. Things like invoices, payments, evaluations, every single service step in this specific example can be automated. So what we try to do in service automation is really to make sure that we move from the traditional service provider towards a service automation provider. So a question would be, yes, of course, a technology interface sounds very good, but why would I do that? What would be the business case or the business benefits for us as an organization to really make a step like that? Well, in order to understand that, there's 5 main key business drivers that really drive the demand and all the interest for service automation nowadays. And the first one of that is that service automation provides a very scalable business model. If you think about any of the services that we just talked about, is that it really doesn't matter if you provide that service once, 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, or 100,000 times. Of course, you need to upgrade your capacity and that kind of stuff. But typically, because the process is the same over and over and over again, it's very, very scalable. And I also strongly believe that the companies or those digital disruptors that we just talked about, they would never have been able to scale so quickly throughout the world if it wouldn't have been for service automation. Because they deliver automatically, they're able to expand more quickly. And most businesses really like that. The second key business driver for service automation is that it allows companies to really start making data-driven decisions. Because you collect all the information and all the flows through a single self-service interface, you can exactly measure how long people are spending in a specific page, what are they looking for, how many people leave, where you can provide the most and the best efficient information. So by using a model of service automation, you immediately make your company ready for what we call data-driven decision making. Because if you analyze what is happening in your self-service portals, you can enhance your service to a higher level. And that really is a key business benefit. The third business benefit is something that we already talked a little bit about. Service automation ensures or facilitates a way to make sure that your services are provided user-centric. And that means that the user is in charge. If the user doesn't want to use the service, he or she will likely go to another provider. So by only designing services that customers actually want, you are able to gain a much more competitive advantage. The fourth one, which is equally as important, especially in a business context, is of course that service automation provides a lot of cost savings. Service automation really ensures that services are delivered efficiently, repetitive, and much easier to manage on a day-to-day basis. In a number of cases that I worked on, the business case was already earned back in 3 to 4 months upon initial launch, which is very, very quick. And that makes it very encouraging for people. Think about an average service center where 10,000 calls per day come in. What if, through service automation, just half of those could be solved automatically? The amount of time that would free up and the amount of money it would save is just tremendous. And that's what service automation is able to facilitate. Last but not least, service automation is aimed at exceeding user expectations. If you know what people are doing in your portal, you are likely to be able to predict the next step. And that really makes it possible to give people a service experience that they will remember. All of the examples that we discussed in the opening slide of the 5 companies that are using service automation, they have become leaders in the market. Why is that? It is because people actually like to use those service providers. They are exceeding user expectations on a day-by-day basis. So that is a little bit of background about what service automation is and why it has been developed. So let's move on towards the service automation framework. So what is the framework exactly? Well, I've been involved for almost 8 years with service automation so far. And I've worked on various projects where we did a lot of service automation implementation. And what we found when we did this the first couple of times is that there was really no guidance or no help available that explained how best to move towards an automated organization. So because of that, we started writing this down in a book. And the cover of the book is something that you can see on the screen. This has been the result of 18 months of research on how best to move companies towards an automated environment. It's part of the best practice publication, so it falls in line with other standards like BRM or DevOps or ITIL. And it's been growing very, very rapidly since publication. A lot of people have been involved. On the screen, you see some names from APMG, Ping, and also ServiceNow that are really embracing this as a framework to be able to help companies start with service automation. It's a fairly new framework. It was launched around a year ago. But ever since the launch, we have certified and provided training to hundreds of people around the globe. So this is really a movement that I think is going to stick for the long run. So let's discuss a little bit what the service automation framework does and why it's so very useful. The service automation framework, before we begin, is nothing else than a guided approach or a step-by-step approach that helps organizations that are currently a traditional service provider to become an automated service provider. And in order to do that, we use the model which you see on the screen right now. The first 3 circles that you see in the center all have to do with some part of design. So we look at the user, we look at service design, and we look at the technology. And within that model, We really want to design services that are applicable, that are efficient, that are repetitive, and that can be delivered through a self-service technology interface. So the first part of the framework really redesigns services for service providers so that they can be delivered in an automated fashion. The 3 blocks that you see on the outside, the outer ring, those are the process blocks, because as soon as a service is live, you are likely going to have customers that want to make changes to that service, or that the service is malfunctioning, or it's not working the way that it is expected to work. So you need to have some kind of a support operation. And that, in service automation, that's what we call the supporting processes. They can be subdivided into 3 main blocks. On the left-hand side, you see automated deployment, which is all the processes you need in order to set up a service for the first time. The second block is called service delivery automation. That contains all the processes that you need during the service delivery phase. Things like troubleshooting, upgrades, resolutions to problems, etc., etc. So those are the more operational processes. And the last block is really one of my personal favorites, which is called serendipity management. And that is the design of processes that really exceed those user expectations in the long run. Here you're going to set up processes to make sure that people come back to you in the long run. So it's a very, very simple framework, but it's very, very effective in practice, because this methodology really helps organizations on a step-by-step basis to redesign their services so that it can be delivered in an automated fashion. So just as a very small recap, there are 6 main building blocks. The first is the user, and that defines the key characteristics of user groups that are using the services. The second building block is what we call service design. This is the business function that really defines the service offering of a provider. Here we're going to design the services. And the third layer is what we call the technology interface. And here it is that we're going to design the technology platform, the application or the self-service portal to make sure that people can use those services automatically. The outer rings consist of processes. We already discussed automated deployment and service delivery automation. And those processes are what organizations need on a day-to-day basis to make sure that their processes or their services keep up and running. The last process block, serendipity management, really facilitates a planned and continuous approach to make sure that people stay with your organization. So to constantly exceed the user expectations. That's what we try to do in this approach. Besides the framework itself that we just discussed, the service automation framework also consists of what we call the implementation techniques. And what this is very simple, a step-by-step approach on how you can automate your services. So suppose you're a traditional service provider today that delivers services by phone or analog or on a day-to-day basis, and you want to transform towards an automated service provider. Well, the 7 steps out of the service automation framework really help you to do that into a step-by-step approach. And that is what makes it very practical. It is what makes it very tangible for people to really start doing it themselves. And that's also why I think why the whole service automation framework is so incredibly powerful, is that it is not only because it's very theoretical, it also really gives you the steps on how to move forward with it. So it's theory and practice all in one. The last key element that I want to briefly discuss is the technique of service automation blueprinting. And that is one of those 7 techniques that we just discussed in the previous slide. The technique of service automation blueprinting is a workshop approach that is very, very useful for organizations that really want to draw up all of their services one by one and start to automate those. So if you understand how this technique works, you are able to really start designing automated services by yourself. So just with a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of theory, you are able to start designing and delivering automated services the moment you've completed the course or the training, to really make this benefit in your own organization. So here's an example of a blueprint that has been filled out or has been completed by customers. And here you can see the difference between user actions, technology interface, supporting processes, and how a service moves through their phases one step at a time. So this is an incredibly useful tool for organizations that really want to start delivering their services automatically. And we've been doing these kinds of workshops with various customers across the globe that are all benefiting from filling out these blueprints on a day-to-day basis. So this is a very high-level overview of what service automation is and how the service automation framework has been composed. I will hand back to Harry shortly, but before we do that, I'd like to show you how you can make sure that yourself can benefit from the things that we just discussed, or how you can start working with service automation yourself. The Service Automation Framework and the certification scheme is delivered by APMG International. That's a leading examination institute that does various certifications in IT best practices across the world. And there's 4 levels of certifications that you can take or that are under development. The Service Automation Foundation examination is the one that's already available. And across the world, we're close to 1,000 people who have already taken that in the past year. And that is a course that is just the introduction, or a thorough introduction, I should say, to everything that we just discussed. So in this 2-day course, you really dive into all the aspects that we just discussed. And if you're then interested in progressing further, there are design, delivery, and master examinations, which are all due to launch at the beginning of 2019. There's also a lot of material available already. There's a textbook, of course, that's the one that you already saw on the slide. There's workbooks, there's a syllabus or sample exams in order to prep for the examination, and exam answers that really can help you to understand what you did wrong and what you did right. There's also a ton of research available on the website. But now I would like to hand back over to Harry, who can explain to you what you can do with Talp in order to progress to the next level.
Thanks a lot, Jan. This was a great presentation for us. So I have a couple of questions Noah got here for me. One is, what is the relationship between SAF and ITIL? So can you just throw some ideas on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, ITIL is a process model, and ITIL doesn't say how you should deliver those services on a day-to-day basis. So I think most people that are familiar with ITIL will know that it is about designing service desks. It is about making sure that you have the appropriate processes in place. So you can use the ITIL framework within the top right corner of the Service Automation Framework, Service Delivery Automation, and just use the ITIL processes there, but then just to deliver them in an automated way. So instead of calling a help desk or a service desk to get something resolved, you can just move towards the self-service portal to resolve the issue by yourself. So that's the commonalities and differences.
Great. So the next question I have is about how it is related to RPA, robotic process automation. Is it complementing it, or how it's differing from that?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. And RPA is something that has also been growing very rapidly in the last couple of years. RPA and service automation complement each other completely, in the sense that RPA really focuses on the robotic sides of it. So RPA techniques can be used to realize service automation. And that's the relationship. So RPA really looks at the underlying technology that can be used within service automation.
Okay, okay. So the next question I got is about which technology can support um, service automation. Is it similar to RPA or is it similar question?
Well, I think that's a very good question. And every kind of technology that can support self-service capability would be an adequate technology. Think about what you do on your phone on a day-to-day basis. The apps that you use there are basically interfaces towards different services. So whether you're booking a cab, booking a taxi, looking at your mortgage, looking at your bank statements, all of those are automated services. So the technology can be mobile technology, so interfaces, applications, but can also be self-service portals from products like ITSM type of products. So there's a variety of technology, but I think that the common denominator is that they should really be able to have an interface through which users can request services.
Okay, okay. The last question I got is about how DevOps automation is related with service automation. Is it closely related, or how it's, because I've seen this automation everywhere, especially in
Yes.
DevOps world.
Yeah, really, automation is becoming a very, very popular term. With DevOps process automation, and we frequently are talking about tool chains in that regard. So DevOps automation really looks at the back end from the service provider point of view. In most DevOps automation that I've seen, there is no direct interface towards the end customer or the end user. So it's technology that's primarily used by the operations teams in order to realize tasks. What we're looking at in service automation is really to provide technology that is external facing, through which users themselves can ask requests. I hope that makes it a bit clear.
Sure, sure. I think that's the question I have. Just opening this for the audience again, just to see if they have anything. I'm unmuting all of them. Jay, do you have any questions? Manikantan, anyone?
No, from my side, Hari.
Right. I think, okay, okay. Thanks a lot for everyone. We'll be sending across this webinar. Before I close this session, I just want to announce our upcoming courses. One is on the service automation framework itself. First time we are launching it in India, and this will be on 31st and 1st of April. And we have also have the DevOps leader courses in Bangalore on 24th and 25th. You can reach to us using our email ID below, which is called info@topsolutions.com. Thanks, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Harry, for hosting, and it was a pleasure to deliver this talk today.